For almost 10 years, Ethan Cole lived completely alone. No family, no friends, no human voices, only the soft hum of the wind across the empty valley. His home was a small wooden cabin standing at the edge of a forgotten forest on the planet Eden 9. It was a human colony once, now long abandoned after a deadly storm wiped out most of the settlers. Ethan survived because he was on a supply run that day. When he came back, there was no one left. Just silence and ghosts in the wind. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Ethan stopped counting. He hunted small animals for food, grew vegetables, and repaired old machines. He spent his evenings watching the twin suns sink below the purple horizon, whispering to himself so he wouldn't forget how human speech sounded. But deep inside, a part of him had started to fade, the part that believed he would ever see another face again. Then one night, everything changed. The wind that evening was strange. It wasn't the usual soft breeze. It carried a low, deep vibration that made the ground tremble. Ethan felt it before he heard it. He looked up to the darkening sky and saw a light cutting through the clouds. Not lightning, not a star. It was moving, fast, and falling. A loud boom echoed across the valley. A fireball streaked past the mountains and vanished behind the trees. Ethan's instincts came alive. He hadn't seen anything fall from the sky since the colony ships left. Could it be another human ship? Rescue, he didn't think. He just grabbed his flashlight and his old rifle and ran toward the crash. The forest was alive with strange sounds. Branches snapped. The air smelled of burnt metal and ozone. As he reached the clearing, he saw it. A small silver ship half buried in the ground, smoke rising from its cracked hull. The strange hum was still coming from it, like the ship itself was breathing. Ethan's heart pounded. He aimed his flashlight toward the open hatch. Something moved inside. He froze. His finger rested on the trigger, then he heard it. A voice. Soft. Weak. Not human. It sounded like a melody spoken in words he didn't understand. He lowered the rifle slightly and stepped closer. From the broken door, 3 figures slowly appeared. Their skin shimmered like pale moonlight. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and their shapes were human, but not quite. They were alien women, and each one carried something small in her arms, like a child. For a long second, no one spoke. The forest was silent again. Ethan's mind raced. He didn't know what to say, what to do. Were they dangerous, lost? Were they even real, or had his loneliness finally broken him? Then one of them, tall, silver-haired, with calm blue eyes, stepped forward. Her voice, though alien, carried a strange kindness. Please, help, she said in broken English. We need shelter. Ethan's throat went dry. He had lived alone for years, but at that moment he couldn't even find words. He looked at the small beings they carried. Yes, they were children, sleeping, fragile, breathing. Something inside him. Something buried deep. Awakened. He nodded slowly. Come this way, he whispered. Back at his cabin, he cleared the old room he never used. He lit the fire, boiled water, gave them blankets. The women sat quietly, their faces filled with exhaustion and worry. Ethan noticed small wounds on their arms, like burns or marks from restraints. When he tried to ask what happened, they only exchanged glances. The silver-haired one, who seemed like their leader, finally said, We escaped. Escaped? Ethan repeated. From who? She looked at him with eyes that almost seemed to glow brighter. Hunters, she said softly. They come for us. And for our children. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled. Ethan felt the air grow colder. He didn't know who those hunters were or why they wanted these women. But he knew one thing. This night was not the end of his loneliness. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. Because as the flames flickered, Ethan noticed faint red lights blinking through the forest outside, like eyes watching from the darkness. And in that moment he understood. He was no longer alone. But he was no longer safe either. Ethan woke to the faint sound of whispers. For a moment he thought he was dreaming again, the kind of dreams where voices spoke from memories. But then he heard the soft crackle of fire, the gentle movement of footsteps, and the sound of children breathing. He opened his eyes. Morning light was spilling through the cracks of his cabin walls, painting everything gold. And there they were, the 3 alien women and their children, alive, real, sitting near the fire like a vision from another world. For the first time in years, His home was not silent. The silver-haired one noticed he was awake. She turned to him and gave a small nod. "You sleep long," she said, still struggling with English words. Ethan rubbed his face and sat up. "Guess I was tired. It's been a long night." The second woman, with green-tinted skin and bright amber eyes, was trying to fix one of the small children's blankets. The child's skin shimmered faintly, like crystal dust under the sunlight. Ethan couldn't help but stare. "Your kids," he said softly. "They're beautiful." The women looked at each other. The silver-haired one smiled weakly. "We call them starborn," she said. "They are not safe." Ethan frowned. "Not safe? From what?" Before she could answer, a distant rumble echoed from the mountains. The sound was low, metallic, like an engine, old and broken but still alive. The aliens instantly froze. Their eyes widened with fear. The children stirred and whimpered. "They find us," whispered the green-skinned woman. Ethan stood up quickly and grabbed his rifle. "Who's coming?" "Hunters," the leader said again. Her voice trembled now. "They follow the ship's signal." Ethan's mind raced. He looked outside. The morning was quiet, but the birds had gone. No sound in the forest. That was never a good sign. "Stay inside," he said. "Don't make a sound." He moved to the window, scanning the tree line. Nothing. Only mist between the tall black trees. Yet he could feel it. That heavy pressure in the air. The kind that came before danger. Minutes passed. No movement. The sound faded away. Maybe they were safe. Maybe. He turned back to the women. "You need to tell me everything. Who are these hunters?" The leader took a deep breath. "We come from the world of Alora," she began slowly. "There, mothers who bear starborn are hunted. The hunters take the children. For power. For weapons. We run. Our ship was damaged. We fall from the sky." Ethan listened quietly. He had heard stories about the Aelorians before, long ago during the colony days. They were peaceful, intelligent, but mysterious. He never imagined he'd meet them here on a dead planet. "So you're refugees," he said. "You crash-landed here by accident." "Yes," she nodded. "We not mean harm. We only need place to stay. Just until we heal." Ethan looked around his small cabin. It wasn't much. Cracked walls, broken furniture, one extra bed. But he saw the fear in their eyes, the way they held their children close. "You can stay," he said finally. "For now. But if someone's tracking your ship, we'll need to hide it, and we'll need to be ready." The rest of the day passed in quiet work. Ethan led them back to the crash site and helped cover the small silver ship with leaves and dirt. The alien women worked silently, moving with grace and strength. Even with fear in their eyes, there was something powerful about them. A calm courage that reminded Ethan of soldiers he once knew. At the cabin, he showed them how to use the old water pump, how to light the firewood, how to make simple soup. They learned fast, curious, and careful. The children laughed for the first time, a soft musical sound that made Ethan's chest tighten. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard laughter in his home. When the twin suns began to set, painting the sky orange and pink, Ethan sat outside on the porch. The silver-haired alien joined him. For a long time they said nothing. Finally she spoke. "You save us. Why?" Ethan looked at the horizon. "Because once someone saved me too, long ago. And because no one deserves to be hunted." She nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the sunset. "You are good human." He gave a small smile. "That's what they used to call me. Not sure I still am." For a while peace hung in the air. Then somewhere in the forest a red light blinked again. Far away but moving closer, Ethan didn't see it. But the silver-haired woman did. Her expression darkened. "They found us," she whispered. And just like that, the calm night turned back into fear. Night returned like a shadow crawling over the land. The forest that once whispered softly now felt alive with unseen eyes. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. The three alien women sat close together, their children sleeping between them. Ethan stood by the window, rifle in hand, staring into the dark trees. He had seen war before, years ago, back when humanity still reached for the stars. But this was different. This was his home now, and for the first time in 10 years he wasn't fighting for survival alone. A faint click echoed outside. Then another. Ethan's breath stopped. That wasn't an animal. That was metal. He crouched and motioned to the aliens to stay quiet. The silver-haired one, her name was Lyra, he had learned, nodded silently. She gathered the children close, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Ethan slipped outside through the back door, moving like a shadow between the trees. The air smelled of smoke and oil. Then he saw it, a flash of red light sweeping across the forest floor. A drone. He ducked behind a fallen log as the drone passed overhead. It was black, spider-like, and humming with a high-pitched sound. The light from its sensor cut through the mist, scanning the ground. He knew what that meant. If it found a heat source, it would call the hunters. He waited until it turned away, then lifted his rifle and aimed carefully. One breath in, one out. He fired. The drone burst into sparks, crashing against a tree with a metallic cry. But the sound was enough. It told the others exactly where he was. From the distance came a mechanical growl, engines powering up. Red dots appeared between the trees, moving in lines. Ethan's heart sank. There were at least 6 of them, maybe more. Tall figures in black armor, faces hidden behind glass masks that reflected the moonlight. Each carried weapons that pulsed with blue light, energy rifles. Lyra, he shouted. Get everyone to the cellar, now! He ran back to the cabin as the forest exploded with blue fire. Energy bolts struck trees, burning holes through bark. The night filled with the smell of ozone and smoke. Ethan ducked behind a wall, returning fire with his old rifle. The bullets weren't much against armor, but they made the hunters pause. Inside, Lyra and the others rushed to the hidden cellar trapdoor beneath the floorboards. The children cried softly, scared but silent as their mothers guided them down. Ethan reloaded quickly, shouting, "Go! I'll hold them off." Lyra hesitated at the door. "You fight alone?" she asked. He smirked, though his hands were shaking. "Been doing that for years." Before she could reply, another blast hit the cabin, shattering a window. Splinters flew everywhere. Lyra's face hardened. She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small crystal sphere glowing with faint white light. "Then not alone," she said. She raised the crystal, and for a moment, the air shimmered. A wave of energy pulsed outward, forming a translucent shield around the cabin. When the next blast came, it hit the barrier and exploded into light instead of fire. Ethan stared in disbelief. "That was you?" Lyra nodded. "Short time only. You must run." But Ethan shook his head. "No, they'll just follow. We end this here." The hunters were closing in now, their voices mechanical, cold. "Target confirmed. Life signs detected. Retrieve the starborn. Eliminate the human." Ethan's jaw tightened. Eliminate the human. He almost laughed. 10 years alone, and now he was the target of aliens hunting mothers and children. He waited until the shield began to fade. Then he grabbed 2 small grenades from his old supply chest, relics from the colony days, and pulled the pins. "For the record," he muttered, "I was enjoying the quiet." He threw them out the window. The night erupted in twin bursts of white light. When the smoke cleared, 2 hunters were down, armor cracked. The others regrouped, scanning through the haze. Ethan slipped out the back again, circling through the trees. He fired from a new angle, drawing their attention away from the cabin. One bolt hit a tree inches from his head, sending sparks across his face. He ignored the pain, moving fast, firing again. Suddenly, one of the hunters appeared behind him. It swung its rifle like a club. Ethan barely ducked in time, rolled, and fired point blank. The armor shattered. The alien inside screamed, not mechanical but alive. Ethan froze for a second. These weren't just machines. They were living hunters. By the time he stumbled back to the cabin, smoke filled the air. The forest glowed with fire. Lyra stood at the door, her eyes bright with energy, holding her hands out. Bolts of light danced between her fingers like lightning, striking at the remaining hunters. "Inside," she shouted. Ethan dove through the door as another explosion shook the ground. He slammed it shut, breathing hard. When silence finally returned, he looked around. The cabin was half-burned, walls cracked, but they were alive. Lyra knelt beside him, trembling. "They will come again," she whispered. "More will come. You must choose, stay and die. Or run." Ethan looked at the frightened children, the smoke rising through the night sky, and the burning forest that had once been his only friend. His answer was simple. He stood, loading his rifle once more. "Then we run," he said, "but not until I make sure they never follow." The fire from the forest still burned when dawn came. Thick smoke covered the valley, curling through the trees like black ghosts. Ethan stood on the porch of his damaged cabin, staring at the ashes. He could smell metal, fire, and something else. Fear. Behind him, Lyra and the other two alien mothers were packing what little they had. The children stayed close to their mothers, quiet and wide-eyed. They were small, glowing faintly under the sunlight like living starlight. Ethan tightened the strap of his backpack and looked at Lyra. "They'll follow the smoke," he said. "We need to move now," Lyra nodded. "Where do we go?" Ethan pointed toward the north, a stretch of mountains covered in fog. "There's an old bunker there, used during the early colony years. If it's still standing, we can hide." No one spoke again. They just moved. The group began their journey through the ruined forest. The once quiet land was now full of fallen trees and burning roots. The hunters' weapons had left scars on everything, nature and soul alike. Ethan led the way, rifle in hand, scanning every sound. The women followed close, stepping lightly over the ashes. Their movements were silent, graceful. Even in exhaustion, there was a strange calm about them, like they belonged to the stars themselves. Hours passed. The suns climbed higher, then dipped again. The forest began to change, and the trees grew thicker, the light dimmer. Strange glowing plants lit the path in shades of blue and green. The youngest child, a small girl with silver hair like her mother's, touched one of the glowing plants. The light grew brighter, following her fingers like it knew her. Ethan stared, surprised. How did she do that? Lyra gave a gentle smile. Starborn are connected to life. Wherever they walk, life remembers them. He didn't fully understand, but he felt something deep inside. A quiet warmth he hadn't felt in years. Hope. By evening, they reached the edge of the mountains. Ethan found an old trail leading upward. Rocks crumbled beneath their feet, and cold wind cut through their clothes. The children were tired, but none of them complained. As the group rested for a moment, the second mother, the one with green skin, spoke softly. Her name, Ethan had learned, was Nira. "You risk your life for us," she said.
"Why?" Ethan shrugged.
"Guess I forgot how to do nothing. Maybe helping you makes me feel human again." Nira tilted her head. "You are human, but not like others we met before." He frowned. "You've met humans?" Lyra joined in, her face serious. "Yes, long ago. Traitors, soldiers. They came to Elora before the war. Some were kind. Some hunted us too." Ethan's heart tightened. "Humans hunted you?" "Yes," she said quietly. "For the same reason as the others. The power of the Starborn. Some believe it can make them gods." Ethan didn't reply. He looked up at the twin moons shining over the peaks and thought about humanity. All the good, all the evil. He had seen both. Maybe these aliens weren't so different after all. When night came, they finally reached a cliffside. Hidden behind vines was a metal door half buried in rock. The old bunker Ethan remembered. With some effort, he forced it open. The air inside was cold and stale but dry. The place was small but safe. Steel walls, broken lights, and dusty bunks. It was once a shelter for miners. Now it would have to protect something far greater. Ethan set down his rifle and turned on a small lantern. "We'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next." The women spread blankets for their children. The little ones soon fell asleep, glowing softly in the dark. Ethan sat against the wall, watching the light dance across the metal room. Lyra sat beside him. "You are quiet," she said. "Just thinking," he replied, "about how fast everything changed. A week ago I thought I'd die alone." Lyra looked at him gently. "You are not meant to be alone." "No one is," he smiled faintly. "Guess the universe decided to prove that." For a while, silence filled the bunker, a peaceful kind of silence, not the lonely one Ethan knew so well. Then, suddenly, the youngest child began to glow brighter. Her small hands moved in the air, tracing shapes of light. A floating image appeared above her. Stars, planets, and a strange symbol Ethan had never seen before. Lyra gasped. "She is showing us something." The symbol pulsed, then formed into a map. A path leading beyond the mountains into the desert beyond. Ethan leaned closer. "What does it mean?" Lyra's eyes widened. "It means she knows where the hunters come from, and maybe where to end it." Ethan stared at the map, the tiny lights flickering like hope itself. So this was no longer just about hiding. This was about answers, about fighting back. He stood, picking up his rifle again. "Then tomorrow," he said, "we follow the stars." Lyra met his gaze and nodded. "Together." The wind outside howled across the mountains, but inside the bunker, something new had been born, a bond between a lonely man and 3 alien mothers. And somewhere far above, in the cold silence of space, new signals awakened. Hunters regrouping, tracking their prey once again. The chase was far from over. It was only just beginning. The next morning came with silence and light. The suns rose slowly over the mountains, turning the snow peaks gold and the valleys silver. Ethan stood at the entrance of the bunker, the cool air brushing his face. Behind him, the mothers and children were waking up. He turned to them and said quietly, "We move now. The hunters will track the signal from your ship soon. We can't stay here." Lyra nodded, holding her daughter close. The map the child had created the night before still hovered faintly in the air. A trail of glowing stars leading toward the endless desert beyond the mountain range. That was their destination now. The map promised something. Maybe safety, maybe truth. Either way, they had to find it. The climb down the mountains was slow and hard. The path was sharp and narrow, surrounded by cliffs on one side and deep drops on the other. The group moved carefully, every step echoing through the stone. Ethan carried one of the smaller children on his back. The boy's skin shimmered faintly under the sunlight. "You doing okay back there, kid?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle. The boy smiled and nodded. "You are strong," he said in a small musical voice. Ethan chuckled. "Haven't heard that in a while." Lyra walked beside him, watching quietly. "He likes you," she said. Ethan shrugged. "Guess he doesn't have many options?" Lyra tilted her head. "No, Ethan, children do not like from need. They like from truth." Her words made him pause for a moment. He didn't know what to say, so he just kept walking. By afternoon, the forest ended, and the desert of echoes began. It was vast and endless, with red gold sand that shimmered like glass. The heat hit them like a wave. Ethan shielded his eyes, scanning the horizon. "No cover," he muttered. "If those hunters are scanning from above, they'll see us in seconds." Lyra raised her hand and the air shimmered again. A faint distortion surrounded them, like invisible heat waves. "What's that?" Ethan asked. "A veil," she said softly. "It bends light around us. For a short time it hides," Ethan smiled. "Remind me not to make you mad." She didn't smile back. "The power of Starborn is not for war," she said. "It is for life. For balance. But hunters, they twist it." They started walking again, the desert stretching endlessly before them. Each step left glowing footprints that faded after a few seconds, as if the sand itself didn't want to remember. Hours passed. The air grew hotter. The children were exhausted. Ethan looked up and saw what appeared to be the remains of a city far ahead. Tall towers half buried in sand, glowing faintly in the distance. "There," he said, pointing. "We'll rest there." By sunset, they reached the ruins. The city was ancient, its walls covered with strange markings, its streets silent. Broken statues of alien figures stood in the sand, their eyes hollow, their hands reaching toward the stars. "This was once a human colony," Ethan murmured, touching the stone. "Before my time." "Before the storms." Lyra ran her hand across one of the carvings. Her eyes widened. "No," she said softly. "This is older than your kind. This is Aelorian design." Ethan blinked. "You mean your people were here before humans ever came?" "Yes," she whispered. "We traveled between stars long ago. We called this place the Gate of Harmony, but we thought it was lost forever." She looked around, her face full of wonder and sadness. "Now I understand. The map. It led us home." As the night fell, they made camp inside one of the crumbling towers. The children slept peacefully for the first time in days. Ethan and Lyra sat outside watching the twin moons rise. "You said this place was called the Gate," Ethan said. "What's beyond it?" Lyra hesitated. "A weapon," she said at last. "Or a key. Depends who holds it. The power of the Starborn can open it. That is why they chase us." Ethan frowned. "So the hunters want it for themselves." "Yes," she said. "If they reach it first, they will control not just our world, but every world." Ethan's hand tightened around his rifle. "Then we can't let that happen." Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. "You would fight for a world not yours?" He smiled faintly. "I already live in it. Makes it my problem." For the first time, Lyra smiled too. A real smile, warm and full of light. Then the ground beneath them trembled. A low hum echoed through the ruins. Ethan stood quickly, scanning the horizon. Far in the distance, red lights appeared, moving fast, crawling across the desert like fire. Lyra's smile faded. They found us again. Ethan raised his rifle, eyes hard. Then they just walked into a trap. As the stars burned above the desert sky, the man who once lived alone prepared for a fight that could decide the fate of two species. The gate of harmony was waking, and so was something far older than either human or alien. The night over the desert was silent, too silent. Even the wind had stopped. The red lights in the distance grew larger, moving like crawling embers across the dunes. The hunters were coming. Inside the ruined city, Ethan checked his rifle, loading the last of his bullets. He glanced toward Lyra and the others. They stood near a huge stone arch half buried in sand. Strange glowing lines ran across it, pulsing slowly, like the heartbeat of something asleep for ages. That was the gate of harmony. Lyra's child stood in front of it. Her small hands lifted, her eyes bright with white fire. The air around her shimmered. The ground trembled under their feet. Ethan swallowed hard. What's happening to her? Lyra's voice was calm, though her hands shook. The gate is answering. It feels her blood, it knows she is starborn. A soft hum filled the ruins. The lines on the arch grew brighter. Dust floated into the air, forming patterns, spirals, symbols, stars. It was beautiful and terrifying. Ethan took a step closer. Can she control it? Lyra shook her head. No one controls the gate, it listens only to truth. The first energy blast came a moment later. Blue fire tore across the sand, striking old stone and sending shards into the air. Ethan ducked behind a wall, firing back. The hunters were advancing fast, 10, maybe more, black armor glowing under the moons. Lyra shouted, "Protect the child!" Ethan didn't need to be told. He ran toward the arch, bullets cutting through the air around him. He slid behind a fallen pillar and aimed carefully. 2 hunters went down. The others spread out, surrounding the ruins. Nira and the third mother, Sira, raised their hands, calling on their strange light powers. A transparent wave rippled outward, knocking one hunter off his feet. But it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered. Ethan fired again, covering Lyra and the child. "We can't hold them off forever," he yelled. Lyra's eyes flashed. "Then we don't fight forever." She turned toward the gate and began to chant in her language, a song made of light. The air grew heavy. The glowing symbols on the arch spun faster, rising into the sky. The gate began to open. A crack of white light split the darkness, stretching higher and higher until it touched the clouds. It was like looking into a living storm. Beautiful, endless, full of stars. Ethan stared in awe. "What is it?" Lyra whispered. "The heart of the universe. The beginning of all worlds. The place our kind calls origin." The hunters stopped firing. Even they seemed afraid. Their leader stepped forward, raising his weapon but not shooting. His voice came through the helmet, cold and hollow. "Give us the starborn," he said, "or the gate will destroy you all." Ethan stood up slowly, rifle in hand. "Funny," he said, "I've been dead inside for years, not afraid to finish the job." Before the hunter could respond, Ethan fired. The shot hit the leader's weapon, knocking it from his hand. Chaos broke out again, fire, light, screams. Lyra's daughter suddenly cried out. The gate flared brighter, blinding everyone. Ethan turned away, shielding his eyes. When he looked again, the girl was floating above the sand, surrounded by a halo of light. The hunters froze. "She's merging with it," Lyra shouted. Ethan ran forward, fighting the burning wind. "She'll die if it keeps going." Lyra's voice broke. "If she closes the gate, the hunters can never use it, but it will take her." Ethan's chest tightened. He looked at the child, small, glowing, brave. She was saving everyone, and she didn't even understand death. He made a decision. He sprinted through the blinding light, grabbed the child, and pulled her down. The energy hit him like fire, throwing him backward. Pain shot through every bone, but he didn't let go. He shielded her with his body until the light faded. When the world finally stopped spinning, he was lying in the sand, coughing. The gate was closing. The hunters were gone, vanished in the storm of light. Only dust and silence remained. Lyra crawled toward him, tears glowing in her eyes. "Ethan, you saved her." He smiled weakly. "Guess I'm not completely useless." She touched his face gently. "You gave part of your life to stop the gate. You carry its mark now." He looked at his hands. Strange glowing lines had appeared beneath his skin, like the ones on the gate. "What does that mean?" Lyra whispered. It means you are no longer just human. The gate chose you. The wind began to rise again, carrying away the ashes of battle. The night sky returned, clear and endless. Ethan looked at the stars and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. For the first time, he wasn't surviving. He was part of something greater, but as he gazed into the sky, he noticed one star move, too steady, too red. Not a star. A ship. Lyra followed his gaze, her expression turning cold. They sent more. Ethan stood slowly, gripping his rifle. The light under his skin pulsed like a heartbeat. Then, he said, voice calm and steady, let's show them what happens when you hunt a human who finally has something to fight for. The desert was quiet again, but not for long. Ethan could feel it, the tremor in the air, the vibration deep in the sand. More ships were coming. He looked up and saw them, 3 black carriers breaking through the clouds like shadows with wings. Their engines roared, shaking the ruins below. Lyra stood beside him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They come for the gate, she said softly. And for her. Ethan looked at the starborn child sleeping peacefully in Nira's arms. Her glow was dim now, faint but alive. Then they'll have to go through me first, he said, checking his rifle one last time. Lyra touched his arm. You are hurt. You can't fight them all. Ethan smiled, tired but certain. You said it yourself. I'm not just human anymore. As the ships descended, the desert turned red with light. Metal doors opened and waves of hunters poured out, black armor gleaming, weapons humming. They spread in lines, circling the ruins like predators. Ethan walked forward alone, his shadow stretching across the sand. The glowing marks from the gate pulsed under his skin, brighter with every heartbeat. He stopped in front of the broken arch and whispered to himself, You wanted a reason to live, Ethan. Well, here it is. Then the sky exploded. Energy fire rained down. The sand burned. Ethan moved fast, faster than before. His body felt lighter, stronger. The light inside him guided every motion. He dodged a bolt, rolled, and fired. His bullets glowed white, tearing through armor like paper. The hunters shouted in their mechanical voices. Target unidentified. Energy signature, gate-borne. Ethan didn't understand what that meant. He didn't need to. He just fought. He remembered every year of loneliness. Every night he had begged the stars for a voice. And now those stars had given him one. He was no longer the last human on Eden 9. He was its protector. Lyra and the others watched from the ruins. The light around Ethan grew so bright that it began to form a shield, blocking energy blasts. Each step he took left glowing footprints that floated for a moment before fading. He's changing, whispered Nira. Lyra's expression was unreadable. No, she said quietly. He's becoming what the gate chose him to be. The hunters kept coming. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. But the more they fired, the more Ethan's power grew. His rifle melted into his hands, fusing with the light. When he lifted it again, it had become something new. Not metal, but pure energy. He aimed at the nearest ship and pulled the trigger. A beam of white light shot upward, cutting through the hull. The ship exploded in midair, raining fire across the dunes. The shockwave knocked the others back. The desert turned into chaos. Light, fire, screams, and sand flying everywhere. Lyra ran forward, her cloak whipping in the wind. Ethan, stop. The gate's power will consume you. But Ethan didn't hear her. Or maybe he did and didn't care. The light was no longer just inside him. It was part of him. He moved like a storm, untouchable, unstoppable. Then something changed. The last ship hovered low, its doors opening to reveal a tall figure, not armored like the others but robed with a face hidden in shadow. The voice that came from it was deep, calm, and terrifying. So the gate chose a human, it said. Fitting. Your kind always plays with power it cannot control. Ethan raised his weapon. You've done enough harm. This ends now, the figure lifted a hand. If you strike me, the gate will break. Its balance will fall, and your world will die. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. The light around him flickered. He looked back at Lyra, her face full of fear, and at the children glowing faintly in her arms. He understood. Power wasn't the answer. It never had been. He took a deep breath, lowered his weapon, and closed his eyes. Then maybe it's time someone fixed that balance. The mark on his skin flared one last time, so bright it blinded the world. The Gate of Harmony answered his call. A massive wave of white light swept across the desert, swallowing everything. The ships, the hunters, even the dark figure. The storm roared for what felt like eternity, and then faded. When the dust cleared, the desert was silent again. The ships were gone. The hunters were gone. Only the broken city and the morning wind remained. Lyra blinked through the haze, searching. "Ethan?" At first, there was no answer. Then she saw him, standing where the gate had been. His eyes still glowed faintly, but the marks on his skin were fading. He looked tired, peaceful, almost smiling. "It's over," he said softly. "They won't come again." Lyra stepped closer. "The gate?" "Gone," he said. "I closed it." From inside, she reached out to touch his hand. It was warm and human, but not entirely. "You gave everything," he shook his head. "No, I just finally gave something that mattered." He looked at the children. "They'll grow free now. Make sure they never forget what it cost." Lyra nodded, tears in her silver eyes. "They will remember." "All of us will." Ethan smiled faintly. The sunlight caught his face, and for a second he looked almost made of light himself. Then he stepped back, fading slowly, the glow around him merging with the morning air. And just before he vanished completely, his voice echoed across the dunes. "No one's ever truly alone. Not while someone remembers." Years later, travelers who passed through Eden 9 spoke of strange lights over the desert, glowing footprints that appeared only at dawn, leading toward the horizon. They said it was the spirit of a human who once fought for the stars themselves, the one they called the Guardian of Harmony.